So these are always fun to read through, these criminal tax cases. This one's about a tax preparer. Bronx tax preparer pleads guilty to filing tens of thousands of false tax returns, causing $145 million in fraudulent tax loss. That is a lot of fraudulent returns, people. For me, release U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District of New York. All right, so this is Rafael Alvarez, is this dude's name. Perpetrated and oversaw one of the largest ever tax frauds by a return preparer. Edward Y. Kim, acting U.S. Attorney for Southern District of New York, announced today the guilty plea of Rafael Alvarez, a.k.a. the Magician, to a 2-count superseding information charging Alvarez with 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States and steal government funds, and 1 count of aiding and assisting in the preparation of a false and fraudulent U.S. individual income tax return. The charges arise from Alvarez's orchestration of a decade-long $145 million tax fraud scheme to file tens of thousands, wow, of federal individual income tax returns that include false information designed to fraudulently reduce the individual's tax burden. As part of today's guilty plea, Alvarez agreed to pay the IRS $145 million in restitution and forfeit over $11.84 million in fraudulent proceeds he received from his criminal conduct. Okay, so what was this guy charged? It's always funny to me when you see these folks who are being really shady with their tax prep business, but they weren't even charging people all that much money in the first place. This is a lot of money, right? And I imagine this is his gross revenue, right? Maybe not his net, over, maybe 10 years, because it says a decade long. So he was grossing, over $1 million a year, let's say. I don't know how much of that he kept personally, because he probably had expenses. He probably had staff and things like that. Maybe we have more details later in here, but let's see what the U.S. Attorney says. Acting U.S. Attorney Edward Kim says Rafael Alvarez became known as the Magician by his customers for his supposed ability to make their tax burden disappear. And how was he probably doing this, folks? Well, he was probably doing this by making up deductions. Making up fake charitable deductions on Schedule A, making up fake businesses. And we've seen this with some of the clients we've had who came from some, here at Choice Tax Relief, who came from some nasty tax shops. There would simply just be a bogus Schedule C, right? Where you report your the money you make not as an employee, like you have a side hustle, you drive for Uber or even a small business. Put up a fake Schedule C with no income, no gross income, and like a bunch of expenses, right? So they can deduct like a $50,000 loss against their W-2 income. I mean, it's completely bogus. And I'm guessing that's what this magician was doing, and there's no magic to it. It's simply tax fraud. But as today's guilty plea shows, that's what I said. There is no magic to what Alvarez was doing. He was committing a serious federal crime by falsifying tens of thousands of tax returns and in the process depriving the IRS of $145 million in tax revenue. Today's guilty plea in one of the largest ever tax frauds committed by a return preparer should serve as an important reminder to tax professionals that this office will vigorously investigate and prosecute tax offenses. And the sad part is this guy had thousands of customers, right, who trusted this guy, paid him money every year for their taxes. IRS is probably having a field day auditing all those folks, right? And now they're going to have tax bills, right? Because this guy made up these deductions to get their tax bill to zero. And really, if the return was prepared properly, they might owe the government, thousands of dollars. Right now, the IRS is going to go after them for that money. Okay, you got to use a competent preparer, or just do it yourself. If you have a simple enough tax return, use TurboTax. I've walked through videos. I've walked through TurboTax on this channel many times. How to use TurboTax to file your taxes if you have a relatively simple return. You just DIY it. Link to one of my TurboTax walkthroughs at the top of the screen. But yeah, it's really sad. Kind of moving along here in this press release. As alleged in the indictment of superseding information and statements made in public filings and court proceedings. Okay, now here's where we get some details. From at least in or about 2010 up to and including in or about 2020, so that's the 10-11 year period, Alvarez was the CEO owner and manager of ATAX New York LLC, also doing business as ATAX New York Marble Hill, ATAX Marble Hill, ATAX Marble Hill NY, and ATAX Corporation. ATAX was a high volume tax preparation company located in the Bronx, New York, which prepared approximately 90,000 federal income tax returns for its customers during this period. So if this is 10 years here and 90,000 were prepared over that period, that's a lot. That's like in each season, like 9,000 per year on average, right? And I'm sure maybe it was a lot more than that in the later years as his practice grew. So let's just do some math here. So I imagine his gross revenue from this was 11.84 million, and he did about 90,000 tax returns. So let's do a little bit of math. This is quite funny actually. 11 million sounds like a bunch of money, but it's over 10 years and he has expenses, right? I don't know how much he was actually making a year. 11,840,000, which was, I'm assuming, his gross revenue over this time period, divided by 90,000. He was only charging about $130 per return. That's really low, folks, for a tax return when you consider, what you're going to pay TurboTax, right, to do it yourself. Like what's TurboTax pricing these days? Let's see. I don't even know. I haven't looked at it yet for this upcoming filing season. Right. Zero if you have a super easy return, but $89, right, is what you could be paying TurboTax, plus $39 for state. Obviously it depends on, how complex your return is. But this guy would not be going to, I don't know if he's going to, I assume he's going to prison, would not be going to prison and having this huge restitution from the IRS if he simply ran a legitimate tax business, maybe not doing 90,000 returns fraudulently, but doing a good professional job, maximizing deductions to the fullest extent of the law for far fewer clients and simply charging them more money. It's just bad business all around. Independent of the crime. And here's the thing, we get a lot of people who come to us and they get a quote for their back tax prep, and some people, a lot of our clients will pay it. It's a reasonable, fair price for all the work we're gonna have to do to reconstruct some of their old records that they don't have. But for other folks, they're saying, the guy down the street says he'll do it for like $100 a year. It's like, don't know the guy down the street, but this is sometimes what you get for paying $100 for a tax return. All right, let's keep moving on here. Alvarez both prepared tax returns for ATAX customers and recruited, supervised, and directed other ATAX personnel who in turn prepared tax returns for customers. During this period, Alvarez oversaw a sweeping fraudulent scheme whereby he and his employees submitted false information to the IRS in ATAX customers' tax returns. This false information, which included, among other things, bogus itemized deductions, that's what I was talking about, the Schedule A stuff, made up capital losses, that's Schedule D, phony business expenses, that's what I was talking about before, Schedule C, and fraudulent tax credits served to fraudulently reduce the customer's tax liability and increase the customer's tax refunds from the IRS. This is a lot of work for charging $130 per return. Like, just quite frankly, like, why would you do this? In total, Alvarez oversaw ATAX's fraudulent submission of tax returns on behalf of customers that deprived the IRS of $145 million tax revenue. Alvarez was so consistent at falsifying IRS customer tax returns that he became known to ATAX's customers as the Magician. Additionally, Alvarez agreed as part of his plea agreement that he was a leader of the scheme and attempted to obstruct or impede the administration of justice with respect to the investigation of the tax fraud scheme when he and an ATAX employee made false statements to an IRS revenue agent. Alvarez's operation of ATAX helped the company generate approximately $12 million in fraudulent proceeds over the duration of the fraud. Oh, this is an older, well, he's not like super old, but I was imagining this was some like young, dude. This guy's should know better. I mean, no matter, even a young prepper should know better, but come on, dude. 61, pled guilty, carries a minimum sentence of 3 years in prison, scheduled to be sentenced next April. So I don't know if he's going to go to prison. It seems like he will for this, in addition to having to pay a ton of restitution to the United States for defrauding the government. Yeah, I like reading these things. I mean, they're interesting. when some of this tax stuff goes criminal. And we get, at Choice Tax Relief, we have folks who call in, and they are fearful that, their case may go criminal, right? Because they've gotten behind, right, on paying taxes, or they haven't filed several returns in several years. They know they should have. They should have paid taxes on these returns. And kind of in their mind, they're kind of thinking, hey, am I committing a crime here? Is this like eviction or fraud? I haven't filed my returns because I haven't, I don't want to pay the taxes and kind of things like that. And to those folks, we generally tell them, look, if you come clean right now and you get in compliance with the IRS right now, and the IRS hasn't, sent criminal investigators to your door yet, if you kind of fix this now before the IRS comes after you, you're in a good spot. Okay, you have nothing to worry about. File your returns, get into some kind of resolution on the existing debt, and there you go. Just be a good little taxpayer the rest of your life. Good to go. That being said, the IRS does, criminal investigation does investigate people every year for this kind of stuff. And it's not just these tax preparers. Sometimes it's just, a small business owner who gets in over their head and greedy and kind of doesn't report all the money they're making or something like that, right? And, they can be facing, prison time as well. And you don't want that. So if you have a tax problem, if you have multiple years of unfiled tax returns, if you owe the IRS at least $10,000 or more, you qualify for a free consultation here at Choice Tax Relief. Give us a call, 866-8000-TAX, or you can visit our website, choicetaxrelief.com. Fill out the form on the homepage, and we will reach out to you. I also have some other videos about seedy tax characters here on the left-hand side of the screen, people who have pleaded or been found guilty of tax crimes. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.